My parents handed my room to my sister while I was still there, telling me to sleep in the garage until I got my life together. I didn't fight. I packed, bought the condo across the street, and built a hot tub they can't ignore. But that's not the whole story. The smoke alarm didn't just scream, it clawed at my eardrums, a banshee wail tearing through the quiet of my parents' Seattle home. I bolted upright on the creaky cot in the garage, my heart hammering like a trapped animal. The air was thick with the acrid bite of smoke, and for a split second, I thought the house was burning down. My laptop, my coding journals, the last scraps of my life from San Francisco. They were all piled haphazardly in cardboard boxes around me, vulnerable to whatever chaos was unfolding. I scrambled to my feet, bare soles slapping the cold concrete floor, and grabbed the fire blanket I'd stashed after noticing the garage's frayed wiring last week. My hands shook as I smothered a faint spark spitting from an ancient outlet, the smoke stinging my eyes and throat. It wasn't a full-blown fire, not yet, but it was a warning that this damp, drafty garage, where I'd been banished like some unwanted tenant, wasn't just uncomfortable, it was dangerous. I'm Claire Morgan, 30 years old, MIT grad, former rising star at a San Francisco tech startup until the industry imploded in a brutal recession. 2 months ago, I'd dragged my life back to Seattle, Washington, expecting a temporary pit stop at my parents' house while I hunted for a new job. I'd been the golden child once, top of my class, coding neural networks before most of my peers could spell algorithm, but now I was sleeping on a cot in a garage that smelled of motor oil and betrayal, my childhood bedroom stolen by my 18-year-old sister, Ava, without so much as a warning. My parents, Susan and David, had shrugged it off, their words still burning in my mind. Sort your life out, Claire. The garage works for now. I'd been contributing $500, 0 cents a month, from my dwindling savings, cooking dinners that could grace a Michelin-starred menu, and rewiring their outdated Wi-Fi to drag their home into the 21st century. And yet here I was, choking on smoke at 2 a.m., wondering if I'd survive the night. The alarm finally fell silent, leaving only the hum of the garage door motor and the distant patter of Seattle's relentless rain against the roof. I sank onto the cot, my back already aching from weeks of sleeping on this flimsy excuse for a bed. My laptop, precariously balanced on a milk crate, blinked with a notification. A follow-up email from Apex Innovations, the AI firm where I'd nailed an interview for a senior software engineer role. The memory of that interview, the way Rachel Cohen's eyes lit up when I walked her through my machine learning portfolio, was the only thing keeping me from screaming into the void. But even that hope felt fragile, like a single line of code that could crash an entire system. I'd almost blown it today, thanks to Ava's friends blasting EDM during my Zoom callback, forcing me to mute and fake a stable connection while my heart pounded. I couldn't afford to lose this job. Not now. Not when every day in this house chipped away at my dignity. I rubbed my eyes, the sting of smoke lingering, and stared at the cardboard boxes holding my life. My MIT diploma, creased from being shoved into a folder, my leather-bound coding journals, pages warped from the garage's damp air. A framed photo of me and Ava from years ago, her gap-toothed grin pressed against my cheek at a 4th of July barbecue. We'd been close then, despite our differences. My calculated precision, her wild spontaneity. I'd spent hours helping her with college applications, reassuring her she'd ace her coding bootcamp interview. "You've got this, Ava," I'd said, believing in her the way I used to believe in myself. But yesterday, when I found my room gutted, her queen-size bed where my desk once stood, her concert posters plastered over my neural network diagrams, she just shrugged. "I need space for my coding rig, Claire." "You're barely here anyway." Barely here? I'd been pouring my soul into this family, cooking, cleaning, paying, all while clawing my way back from a career implosion I didn't cause. The garage door rattled as a gust of wind hit, and I flinched, half expecting another spark from that cursed outlet. I couldn't stay here. Not like this. Not when my parents treated me like a squatter in their own home, and my sister acted like I was an inconvenience to her rise to glory. But I wasn't going to beg or scream. No, I had something bigger in mind. Something that would make them see me, really see me, for the first time. I pulled my laptop closer, the screen's glow cutting through the dark. The Apex email was still open, a lifeline. If I landed this job, it wouldn't just be a paycheck. It would be the key to a plan so bold, so undeniable, they'd never dismiss me again. The next morning, I woke to the ache in my lower back screaming louder than the smoke alarm ever could. The cot was a torture device, sagging under my weight, and the garage's concrete floor radiated cold through the thin sleeping bag. I folded it away before dawn, a ritual born of shame. I couldn't let my parents see the evidence of my demotion, as if hiding the cot made me less invisible. The house was quiet as I slipped into the kitchen. Brewing coffee with mechanical precision, Susan shuffled in, her bathrobe tied loosely, her eyes skimming over me like I was part of the furniture. "Morning, Claire. Can you make sure the guest bathroom's spotless? Ava's boot camp friends are coming over." I gripped the coffee mug, my knuckles whitening. "I cleaned it yesterday," I said, keeping my voice even. I'd scrubbed every tile until my hands were raw, but it was never enough. Not for Ava's friends, who treated the house like their personal playground, leaving soda cans and chip crumbs in their wake. "Well, do it again," Susan said, already turning away. "Ava's under a lot of pressure with her boot camp. She needs a clean space." Pressure? I wanted to laugh. Ava was 18, coasting on charisma and a TikTok following, while I was 30, fighting to rebuild a career in a tech industry that had spit me out. But I nodded, swallowing the bitterness, because arguing would only paint me as the difficult one. I spent the morning scrubbing a bathroom that gleamed, missing the first 10 minutes of a virtual job fair because Ava's study group needed priority. By noon, I was back in the garage, my laptop balanced on my knees, applying to every tech firm in Seattle, Amazon, Microsoft, smaller startups with names like Quantum Labs and Code Vibe. My fingers flew across the keyboard, each application a small act of defiance. I wasn't a failure. I'd coded algorithms that powered self-driving car prototypes. I'd presented at conferences where VPs from Google took notes. And yet, here I was, relegated to a cot, my worth measured by how quietly I could fade into the background. The garage door creaked open and Ava poked her head in, her blonde hair pulled into a messy bun. "Hey, Claire, you seen my charger?" she asked, not even glancing at the chaos of my belongings. Her eyes were glued to her phone, probably texting her boot camp squad. "It's probably in your room," I said, my voice flat. Your room. The words tasted like ash. That room had been my sanctuary, its walls lined with my MIT awards, my desk cluttered with prototypes for smart home apps I'd coded in college. Now it was Ava's, her LED strip lights casting a neon glow over my erased existence. "Oh, right," she said, already retreating. "By the way, can you keep it down tonight? We're doing a hackathon prep session." Keep it down? I hadn't made a sound louder than a keystroke in weeks. I nodded, my jaw tight, and she vanished, leaving the door ajar so a gust of damp air swept in. That afternoon, I biked to a tech networking event downtown, the Seattle skyline looming through the drizzle. My ribs still ached from last week's near miss with a speeding truck. I'd swerved into a ditch, my bike skidding on wet pavement, the driver's horn blaring as he sped off. I'd limped home, bruised but unbroken, and told no one. What was the point? Susan would have said, I shouldn't be biking in the rain. David would have muttered about taking better care, so I kept it to myself, like I kept everything now. The event was at a sleek co-working space in Pioneer Square, all exposed brick and overpriced coffee. I'd hoped to connect with recruiters, maybe snag a lead at a startup. Instead, I ran into Tyler Voss, a smarmy engineer I'd known at MIT. He spotted me across the room, his grin sharp as a blade. "Claire Morgan, heard you're crashing at your parents' place. What happened to that big sand?" His voice carried, and heads turned. Recruiters, developers, the kind of people whose opinions could make or break me. "I'm exploring opportunities," I said, forcing a smile, my cheeks burning. Tyler laughed, loud enough to draw more eyes. "Exploring? Sounds like you're unemployed and squatting in mommy's basement." The room seemed to shrink, the hum of conversation fading as I stood there, exposed. I wanted to tell him about the Apex interview, about the algorithm I'd pitched that could optimize neural networks tenfold, but I didn't. I excused myself, my hands shaking as I grabbed a water and retreated to a corner. That night, I lay on the cot, the garage's chill seeping into my bones. Tyler's words looped in my head, mingling with Susan's dismissal, David's indifference, Ava's entitlement. I wasn't just invisible, I was a punchline. But then my phone buzzed, the screen lighting up the dark. An email from Apex Innovations. "We are pleased to offer you the position of Senior Software Engineer." My breath caught. $120,000, 0 cents a year. Benefits after 90 days. A chance to lead their machine learning division. I read it twice, 3 times, waiting for the words to dissolve like a cruel joke. They didn't. This was real. I should have been elated. I should have run into the house, woken everyone up, screamed that I'd done it. Instead, I closed the email and set my phone down. Susan had asked about my day over dinner, and when I'd hesitated, she'd turned to Ava's boot camp stories before I could answer. David hadn't even looked up from his plate. Ava had been too busy texting to notice. So I kept the news to myself, a secret weapon I'd wield when the time was right, because I wasn't just going to leave this garage. I was going to make them regret ever putting me here. The next week was a gauntlet of humiliations, each one sharpening my resolve. Susan's demands grew bolder. She asked me to store my laptop in a plastic bin because Ava's skincare products needed more bathroom counter space. "You don't need all that tech cluttering the house," she said, as if my tools of survival were an eyesore. I complied, silently tucking my life into a corner. But every concession fueled the fire in my chest. At a family barbecue the following weekend, the betrayal went public. Aunt Ellen, my mom's sister, who'd always championed my coding dreams, pulled me aside as we set the table. "How's the job hunt, Claire?" she asked, her voice warm with genuine care. Before I could answer, Susan cut in, her tone bright and oblivious. Oh, Claire's camping out in the garage for now. We gave her room to Ava for her boot camp prep. She needs the space more. Ellen's smile froze, her eyes flicking to me with a mix of shock and pity. The garage? She repeated, her voice low. I forced a shrug, my throat tight. It's temporary. Later, as I loaded the dishwasher, Ellen found me alone. This isn't right, Claire. You're their daughter, not some drifter. Do you need money for a place? I can help. Her kindness cracked something in me, but I shook my head. I'm handling it, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I couldn't tell her about Apex. Not yet. I needed to do this my way. That night, I overheard Susan and David through the thin wall separating the garage from their bedroom. I'm worried about Claire, David said, his voice heavy. She's stuck. She needs to hustle harder. Susan's reply was sharp. She should have gone into finance like Ellen's husband. Tech's too risky. She's failing at life right now. Failing at life. The words hit like a punch, each syllable a confirmation of my erasure. They didn't see my late-night applications, my bruised ribs from the bike crash, my fight to smother a spark that could have burned my world down. They saw a problem to be solved, a daughter to be motivated by shoving her into a garage. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I opened my laptop and searched for properties in Seattle. Not just any properties, ones close enough to make a statement. My eyes landed on a listing, a flood-damaged condo across the street from my parents' house, priced low because of its state. The photos showed cracked drywall and warped floors, but I saw potential. I saw a future. With my Apex offer, my credit score, and a secret inheritance from my grandmother they didn't know about, I could make it mine. I emailed the realtor, my fingers trembling with purpose. I want to see it tomorrow, I wrote. This wasn't just about escape. It was about reclaiming my worth in a way they'd never forget. The condo tour was a revelation. The realtor, a brisk woman named Carla, warned me about the damage, mold in the basement, a leaky roof, outdated wiring. But the bones were solid, and the rooftop deck offered a view of Puget Sound that stole my breath. Best of all, it was directly across from my parents' living room windows. I could already imagine their faces when they realized I was thriving right under their noses. I'll take it, I said, my voice calm but my heart racing. Carla raised an eyebrow. It's a fixer-upper, Claire. You sure? I nodded. I wasn't just buying a condo. I was buying a stage. The next day, I met with a loan officer at Puget Sound Bank. My Apex contract, my credit, and my grandmother's inheritance. $50,000, 0 cents, I'd never told my parents about, sealed the deal. Smart move, the officer, a guy named Tom, said as I signed the papers. This neighborhood's a gold mine, even with the recession. I smiled, signing my name with a flourish. This wasn't about property value, it was about power. I started at Apex the following week, diving into a machine learning project that could redefine AI-driven logistics. Rachel Cohen, my boss, was a legend in the field, and she didn't hand out praise lightly. Your code's tight, Claire, she said after reviewing my first commit. You're exactly what we needed. Her words were a balm, a reminder that I was more than a garage dweller. At work, I was valued. At home, I was a ghost. I kept my job a secret, leaving the house before dawn and returning late, claiming I was following leads. Susan and David didn't ask for details, too focused on Ava's boot camp achievements. Ava herself barely noticed me, her life a whirlwind of hackathons and Instagram stories. I used my lunch breaks to meet with Miguel, the contractor I'd hired to gut the condo and rebuild it to my specs. Smart home tech, marble countertops, a rooftop hot tub with a glass wall, positioned so my parents couldn't miss it. Every choice was deliberate, a brick in the wall I was building between their dismissal and my triumph. But the plan wasn't without risks. One night, checking the condo's progress, I stepped through a rotted floorboard, my leg plunging into darkness. I caught myself on a beam, but my ankle twisted, pain shooting up my calf. I limped back to the garage, icing it in secret, refusing to let Susan or David see my weakness. Another day, a gas leak forced me to evacuate the condo, spending a night in a cheap motel while Miguel's team fixed it. I lay awake, wondering if I'd overplayed my hand, if the universe was warning me to slow down. But I couldn't. Not now. The final straw came during a family dinner. Ava's friends were over, sprawled across the living room, their laughter echoing as they spilled energy drink on my laptop bag. I salvaged my data, but the incident cost me a night's sleep, my eyes burning as I backed up my Apex project. Susan didn't apologize, she just asked me to cook for Ava's group the next day. I did it, plating gourmet tacos while my ribs ached and my ankle throbbed, all the while plotting my exit. 8 weeks after the Apex offer, the condo was ready. I'd spent every spare moment overseeing the transformation. Smart lights that responded to voice commands, a kitchen that could host a tech summit, a hot tub that gleamed like a middle finger to my parents' neglect. On my last night in the garage, I lay on the cot, absorbing the discomfort one final time. The cold concrete, the hum of the motor, the weight of being erased. I wouldn't miss it. I'd earned better. Before dawn, I packed my life into 2 suitcases and a backpack. The house was dark, my family asleep in their cozy beds. I moved with quiet efficiency, gathering my toiletries from a plastic bin, my journals from a damp box. I left the cot neatly folded, a final act of defiance. They'd have no excuse to call me messy. On the kitchen counter, I placed a note, found my own place. Garage no longer needed. No drama, no pleas, just the truth. I drove to Apex, using the office shower to prep for the day, my suitcases stashed in my car. My phone buzzed with texts from Susan, David, even Ava. Where are you? What's going on? Did you really move out? But I ignored them, focusing on my project. By 5 p.m., I'd crushed a week's worth of coding, earning a nod from Rachel. "You're on fire, Claire," she said. I smiled, knowing the real fire was about to ignite. I pulled into the condo's driveway as the sun dipped below the skyline, my parents' cars visible across the street. I unloaded my bags with deliberate calm, feeling their eyes through their living room window. The front door clicked open, revealing my new world. Sleek hardwood floors, voice-activated lights, the faint hum of a smart thermostat. I set my bags down and breathed it in. The scent of fresh paint, of freedom. The knock came faster than I expected. Susan and David stood on my porch, their faces a mix of confusion and indignation. "Claire, what is this?" Susan demanded, peering past me into the condo. "You bought a house? Across the street?" "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "And I've been working at Apex Innovations for 2 months. The job you never asked about, the career you didn't notice while you were stepping over me in your garage." David ran a hand through his hair, flustered. "You could have told us, Claire. Why the secrecy?" "You could have asked," I shot back. You could have noticed I was more than a problem to shove into a corner, but you didn't. So I built this instead. Susan tried to step forward, assuming entry, but I blocked the doorway. This is my home, I said. You don't get to walk in unless I say so, and right now, you haven't earned it. Their shock was almost tangible, a crack in the facade they'd built around my failure. Behind them, Ava appeared, her expression caught between guilt and awe. Before they could respond, a low rumble started from the rooftop. The hot tub installation, right on schedule. Susan's head snapped toward the sound. What's that? Renovations, I said, my tone clipped. You'll see soon enough. I closed the door, not slamming it, but letting it shut with a finality that echoed in my bones. Through the window, I watched them huddle on the porch, gesturing wildly before retreating across the street. Ava glanced back, her eyes unreadable. I turned away, stepping onto my rooftop deck, the city sprawling below me. The hot tub's frame was taking shape, its glass wall a promise of the statement to come. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclamation. And I was just getting started. The Seattle skyline glittered beyond my rooftop deck, a mosaic of glass and steel that felt both distant and within reach. I stood there, barefoot on the polished hardwood of my new condo, the keys still warm in my hand from signing the mortgage papers hours earlier. The air smelled of fresh paint and possibility, but beneath it lingered the sting of betrayal, a reminder of the garage cot, the damp boxes, the way my parents, Susan and David, had erased me from their home. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a barrage of texts from them and my sister Ava demanding answers. Where are you? What do you mean you found a place? Call us. I silenced it, letting the hum of my smart home system, lights dimming automatically, the thermostat adjusting to a perfect 72 degrees, drown out their noise. This condo, this sanctuary was mine, and across the street from their living room window, they'd see it. Let's see me. In under cover of dawn, leaving only a note, found my own place, garage no longer needed. The words were cold, deliberate, a mirror to the casual cruelty they'd shown when they dumped my life into their garage. Susan's face, pale with shock as she pounded on my door earlier, flashed in my mind. You bought a house? Across the street? She'd stammered, as if I'd pulled off a heist. David's flustered, "Why didn't you tell us?" had only deepened my resolve. I didn't owe them explanations, not after they deemed a cot adequate for their mighty graduate daughter. But as I unpacked my suitcases, arranging my coding journals on a sleek walnut shelf, a strange unease settled in my chest. Their shock wasn't enough. I needed them to understand the cost of their dismissal, to feel the weight of what they'd done. And that's where the hot tub came in, a glass-walled monument to my triumph, positioned to gleam in their line of sight. It wasn't just a luxury, it was a declaration. But victory, I was learning, came with its own dangers. As I plugged in my laptop, the screen flickered with an email notification, a cryptic message from an anonymous sender. "Nice condo, Claire. Be careful who you trust with your secrets." My pulse spiked. Who knew about the purchase? I'd kept it hidden, even from my colleagues at Apex Innovations, where I'd started as a senior software engineer just weeks ago. The mortgage, funded by my new $120,000 0-cent salary, stellar credit, and a $50,000 0-cent inheritance from my grandmother, was my private rebellion. Yet someone was watching. I scanned the condo, my eyes lingering on the smart home cameras I'd installed. Could they be hacked? The thought sent a chill down my spine, but I pushed it aside. Paranoia wouldn't derail me. Not now. My first week at Apex was a whirlwind of code and ambition. The machine learning project I'd been assigned was no small task. Designing an AI algorithm to optimize supply chain logistics for global retailers. If it worked, it could save companies billions. If it failed, my career could crash as spectacularly as my San Francisco startup had. Rachel Cohen, my boss, was a tech legend with zero tolerance for mediocrity. Your mid-work on neural networks caught my eye, she'd said during my interview, her gaze sharp. Don't make me regret hiring you. Her words were both a compliment and a warning, and I felt the pressure every time I opened my code editor. That pressure peaked on Wednesday when a network outage botched my first major demo. I'd spent days perfecting a presentation to showcase my algorithm's potential, only for the Apex servers to crash mid-slide, leaving Rachel and the team staring at a blank screen. "Fix it, Claire," Rachel said, her tone clipped as she left the room. My stomach churned. I stayed late, hunched over my desk in the glass-walled Apex office, rewriting scripts and rerouting data through a backup server. By midnight, I'd salvaged the demo, but my hands trembled as I sent Rachel the updated files. If I lost this job, my condo, my plan, everything would crumble. I couldn't let that happen. Back at the condo, I threw myself into renovations to keep my mind off the near disaster. Miguel, my contractor, was a godsend. Efficient, no nonsense, with a knack for turning my vision into reality. "Kitchen's almost done," he said during a lunch break walkthrough, gesturing to the marble countertops and stainless steel appliances. "Bathroom's next, then the master suite. 8 weeks, tops." I nodded, my ankle still sore from the night I'd stepped through a rotted floorboard, narrowly avoiding a rusted beam that could have impaled me. The condo was a fixer-upper, but every hammer strike, every new fixture, was a step toward reclaiming my life. The hot tub was the centerpiece. I'd hired Pacific Designs, a high-end firm known for bold installations, to build a 12 by 20-foot rooftop masterpiece with a glass wall and LED lighting. "You want it here?" the designer, Lena, asked, pointing to the spot directly facing my parents' living room. Her eyebrow arched, but she didn't question it further. "It'll be a showstopper," she said. That was the point. Every time Susan or David looked out their window, they'd see it. Steaming, glowing, a symbol of everything I'd achieved despite their neglect. But the condo wasn't the only place where danger lurked. One night as I checked the plumbing progress, a faint hiss filled the air. My nose twitched. Gas. The room spun as I stumbled toward the door, my lungs burning. I made it outside, gasping in the cool Seattle air, and called Miguel. "Gas leak," I said, my voice shaking. "Shut it down." His team fixed it by morning, but I spent the night in a motel, staring at the ceiling, wondering if the universe was testing me. The anonymous email flashed in my mind again. "Be careful who you trust." Was someone sabotaging the renovations? Or was I just paranoid? My nerves frayed from weeks of living a double life. Back at my parents' house, I kept up the facade. I'd slip into the garage before dawn, coding late into the night on my laptop, hiding my Apex salary and condo plans. Susan and David didn't notice my absence. They were too busy fawning over Ava. Her room, once mine, now glowed with neon LEDs and a custom workstation, a shrine to her coding bootcamp dreams. When I asked to store a single box of clothes in the hall closet, Susan shook her head. "Ava needs that space for her equipment," she said, as if my existence was an inconvenience. I swallowed my anger, nodding, but inside, I was counting down the days until I could leave. Ava's entitlement grew bolder. Her friends, a clique of wannabe influencers, treated the house like their personal studio, filming TikToks in the living room while I tried to work. One night, they knocked over a can of Monster Energy, the neon green liquid soaking my laptop bag. I dove for it, my heart racing as I checked my hard drive. The Apex project files were safe, but I lost another night's sleep restoring backups. Oops, sorry, Ava said, not looking up from her phone. Her friends sniggered, one whispering, "She's still crashing here?" That's rough. I forced a smile, my nails digging into my palms. They didn't know I was weeks away from owning a condo that could buy and sell their dreams. The tension at home wasn't the only threat. At Apex, a rival firm, Quantum Labs, had caught wind of my project. During a late-night coding session, my laptop froze, a red alert flashing, unauthorized access attempt detected. My stomach dropped. Someone was trying to hack my algorithm. I spent hours reinforcing firewalls, rewriting security protocols, my eyes burning from the screen's glow. By 4 a.m., I'd secured the system, but the incident left me rattled. Was this connected to the anonymous email? To the gas leak? Or was I seeing conspiracies where none existed? The next morning, I found another email. "You're playing a dangerous game, Claire. Back off." No signature, no clues, just a chill that settled deep in my bones. I forwarded it to Apex's IT security team, but they found nothing. No trace of the sender, no breach in their systems. Rachel pulled me aside later, her expression grave. "If this project leaks, we're done," she said. "You're done. Keep it locked down." I nodded, my throat tight, but the weight of her words pressed harder than the garage cot ever had. The condo renovations raced toward completion, each day bringing me closer to my escape. Miguel's team installed smart home tech, voice-activated lights, a security system with facial recognition, a thermostat that learned my habits. The kitchen gleamed with marble and stainless steel, the bathroom boasted a rainfall shower, and the master suite felt like a hotel penthouse. But the hot tub was the crown jewel. Lena's team broke ground on the rooftop, the rumble of machinery echoing through the neighborhood. I caught Susan peering out her window, her face pinched with curiosity. She didn't know it was mine. Not yet. The secrecy was exhausting. I'd leave the house before dawn, work a full day at Apex, meet Miguel during lunch, and return to the garage late, my ankles still throbbing from the floorboard incident. One night, as I coded in the dark, Ava slipped into the garage, her silhouette framed by the doorway. "Claire, I'm sorry," she said, her voice small. "I didn't mean for things to get this bad. I should have said no to the room." I looked up, my fingers pausing on the keyboard. Her apology caught me off guard, but it wasn't enough. "You didn't just take the room, Ava," I said, my voice low. "You let them treat me like I didn't matter. You laughed with your friends while I slept on a cot. Why should I trust you now?" She flinched, her eyes glistening. "I was selfish. I see that. I want my sister back." Her words tugged at something deep, a memory of us building pillow forts as kids, giggling over stolen cookies. But trust was a currency I couldn't afford to spend lightly. "I need time," I said, turning back to my screen. She nodded and left, the door clicking shut behind her. The next day, another bombshell landed. At a neighborhood barbecue, Susan cornered me as I set out plates. "Claire, you're being dramatic," she said, her voice dripping with exasperation. "Sleeping in the garage isn't the end of the world. Families make sacrifices. Sacrifices? I wanted to scream. I'd paid their bills, cooked their meals, rewired their house, and they'd repaid me with a cot and contempt. Instead, I smiled tightly. I'm handling it, Mom. She didn't know I was days away from unveiling a truth that would shatter her narrative. That night, I found a small camera hidden in the condo's HVAC vent, its red light blinking like an accusation. My blood ran cold. Someone was watching. I ripped it out, my hand shaking, and called Miguel. Did your team install this? I demanded. He swore they hadn't, his voice as shaken as mine. I reported it to the police, but they had no leads. Just a vague warning about smart home vulnerability, the anonymous emails, the hack attempt, the camera. They were pieces of a puzzle I couldn't solve, but they fueled my determination. Whoever was behind this wouldn't stop me. The hot tub installation began the day I moved in, the roar of excavators drowning out the neighborhood's usual hum. Susan and David appeared on my porch again, their faces a mix of confusion and outrage. You're building something up there? David asked, craning his neck toward the rooftop. What's going on, Claire? Renovations, I said, my tone cool. You'll see it soon enough. I didn't invite them in, didn't offer explanations. They'd had months to care about my life. Now, they'd learn on my terms. Susan tried again the next day, dropping off a blueberry pie as a welcome to the neighborhood gesture. I took it, thanked her, and closed the door. The pie sat untouched on my counter, a symbol of her refusal to apologize. David followed up, offering to help with upgrades, as if my expertise in smart home tech was irrelevant. I've got professionals, I said, shutting him down. Their attempts at reconciliation were hollow, lacking the one thing I needed, accountability. Meanwhile, the threats escalated. Another email arrived. You can't hide forever, Claire. I traced its IP with Apex's tools, but it led to a dead-end VPN. At work, Quantum Labs upped their game, launching a phishing attack that nearly compromised my project. I spent another all-nighter, my eyes gritty, my fingers numb, building an encryption layer that could withstand a military-grade assault. Rachel noticed my exhaustion, but didn't ask why. You're carrying this team, she said, her tone softening. Don't burn out. I nodded, but the stakes were higher than she knew. Ava's apology lingered in my mind, and when she texted to meet for coffee, I agreed. We sat at a cafe in Capitol Hill, the Seattle rain streaking the windows. I'm going to college next year, she said, stirring her latte. Software engineering, like you. I want to be like you, Claire. Her sincerity disarmed me, but I kept my guard up. You've got potential, I said, but you need to own your mistakes, not just to me, to yourself. She nodded, her eyes serious, and for the first time, I saw a glimpse of the sister I'd lost. The rooftop party was my grand reveal. I'd planned it meticulously, inviting Apex colleagues, neighbors, and Aunt Ellen, but not Susan or David. The hot tub gleamed, its glass wall reflecting the city lights, its steam rising like a victory flag. Guests mingled, sipping cocktails and praising the condo's design. Rachel raised a glass, announcing my promotion to lead engineer on Apex's next big project. To Claire, she said, who's rewriting the future. The applause felt like a rebirth. Across the street, I saw David standing in his yard, watching. Our eyes met, and he raised a hand, a tentative gesture. I nodded, nothing more. Ava arrived late, helping me clear glasses as the party wound down. I got into the University of Washington, she said, her voice soft. Full scholarship. I want to make you proud, Claire. I hugged her, the first real connection we'd had in months. You already are, I said, meaning it. As the last guests left, I stood by the hot tub, the water's glow casting patterns on my face. The anonymous threats, the camera, the hack attempts, they were still out there, unresolved, but they couldn't touch this moment. I'd built this life from the ashes of a garage cot, and no one, not my parents, not a faceless enemy, could take it away. I slipped into the hot tub, the warm water erasing the ache in my ankle, the city lights winking above. This was my victory, my defiance, my home. And I was just getting started.